Essential ingredient number 7. I'm sorry I'm going so fast, but I have only 7 minutes and 23 seconds left. So a healthy gut microbiome. Dysbiosis, as we mentioned, fuels insulin resistance and diabetes. So how do we improve gut flora? By eating more prebiotics. Where do you get prebiotics? From the fiber in plant foods. Things like, Jerusalem artichokes and onions and garlic and all sorts of grains and other fruits and vegetables. And all of these foods, beans, they all provide prebiotics, food for bacteria. We can eat food-based probiotics. So prebiotics are the food for bacteria. Probiotics are the bacteria themselves. So we can do cultured and fermented foods. We need to minimize our intake of foods that are associated with dysbiosis. Highly processed foods, fried foods, artificial sweeteners, which I didn't get to talk about much, but they can actually cause dysbiosis, and meat. So we don't want those things. We want to, I did have it there, avoid artificial sweeteners. Avoid excessive alcohol consumption. Essential ingredient number 8 is a low glycemic load. We want to replace high GI foods with low GI foods because it improves glycemic control, reduces inflammation, and reduces risk of heart disease. So how do we reduce it? By emphasizing non-starchy vegetables and legumes, by controlling our serving sizes of starchy vegetables and legumes, and by selecting lower GI foods within each category. So sweet potatoes instead of white potatoes, intact rather than ground grains. And we want to include foods known to reduce the glycemic impact of meals, like legumes, higher fat foods like nuts and seeds and avocados, acidic foods like lemon or lime juice or vinegar. They actually reduce the glycemic impact of the food we're eating. And some spices like cinnamon can help to reduce the glycemic impact. Essential ingredient number 9 is to load up on anti-inflammatory, phytochemical, and antioxidant-rich foods. And what we know is these foods can help to reduce diabetes risk. So we want to emphasize colorful vegetables and fruits, herbs and spices, legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, sprouted foods, fermented foods, and even certain types of tea like green tea. How do you do that? Think color. The richest sources of phytochemicals are often the most colorful. So purple instead of white onions, maybe black or red instead of brown rice, or black or red quinoa instead of white, dark instead of light greens. We want to include a lot of variety. We want to choose organic because it's higher in phytochemicals and antioxidants than conventional sources. We want to eat more raw foods because some of the enzymes they contain help to convert phytochemicals into their active forms, especially with cruciferous vegetables and allium vegetables. We want to eat sprouts because when we sprout foods, we magnify the phytochemical content. It's often increased 5 to 50 times. We want to pile on the herbs and spices. Drink the antioxidant-rich teas, add the fermented foods. An essential ingredient number 10 is low dietary contaminants. So environmental contaminants and products of high temperature cooking is what we're talking about. These can do a lot of damage. They can cause oxidative stress, fuel inflammation, disrupt hormones and become obesogenic, damage our organs and damage DNA in the central nervous system. That all increases risk of diabetes and its complications. We're talking about pesticides in conventional produce, heavy metals like mercury in fish and arsenic in rice, and persistent organic pollutants in fish and meat and dairy products. And what do we want to do? Well, we want to, again, choose organic when we can, eat lower on the food chain, and vary our grains. Arsenic can injure beta cells, and so we need to limit or at least carefully select our rice. And if we eat it, cook it in a large amount of water because we can get rid of a lot of the arsenic that way. Products of high temperature cooking like heterocyclic amines and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and acrylamide and advanced glycation end products. The heterocyclic amines are only found in animal products, but polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and acrylamide acrylamide can be found in anything. Well, acrylamide's more in potato products because of the asparagine there, which gets converted to acrylamide. So all of these things we need to reduce, and the solution is to avoid charred or blackened foods, especially meat, poultry, and fish. Avoid fried foods. Use moist cooking methods more often where you're using water or broth. Essential ingredient number 11 is to moderate sodium, and very few people with diabetes meet the target. The upper limit recommended for those with diabetes is 1,500 milligrams, and only 2.4% of people with diabetes meet that recommendation. And those with the highest versus lowest quartile of sodium had over double the risk of heart disease and over 10 times the risk if their A1C was over 9. That's scary. 75 to 80% of our sodium comes from processed foods. And if you look at the amount of sodium food, a teaspoon of salt has 2,300 milligrams. Ramen noodles, pickles, vegetable soup, tomato sauce, veggie burgers, Italian dressing, whole wheat bread. You can eat an ounce of potato chips and an ounce of salted peanuts and get less salt than what you would get from 2 slices of bread. Is this shocking? It's because when you coat a food with salt, you taste it. But when you put it throughout the whole batter, you don't. So you need to read labels. And finally, essential ingredient number 12 is adequate micronutrient intakes. People with diabetes often have micronutrient deficiencies, so choosing nutrient-dense foods helps to ensure adequate nutrients when calories are limited. And so nutrient density becomes very important, and the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet are green leafy vegetables and other non-starchy vegetables and fruit. Legumes and starchy vegetables, nuts and seeds are all good choices. The lowest nutrient density of all foods, oil and sugar. Nutrients of concern on plant-based diet, B12 and vitamin D. And B12 is important because for people on metformin, it can really reduce the absorption. So I've got 30 seconds. The take-home message is every time you eat or drink, you either feed disease or you fight disease. Whole food plant-based diets are very powerful medicine for people with type 2 diabetes. And in my opinion, it is time that healthcare systems offered lifestyle treatment programs as the first line of therapy for lifestyle-induced diseases like type 2 diabetes. And it is high time that they offered food services that promote health rather than undermine it. And these are my 2 new books on diabetes, which provide much more detail than what I went into in this lecture. Thank you very much for your attention.